Hello, it's very good to have you with us at this hour. I'm Daniel Che here to provide you with the latest. The nation's top office has made some changes to its lineup of senior secretaries. On Sunday, President Park Geun-hye appointed Lee Won-jong as her new chief secretary. He is the current chairman of the Presidential Committee on Regional Development and previously served as Seoul Mayor and Governor of Chungcheongbuk-do Province. In addition, An Jong-bum, the senior presidential secretary for economic affairs, has been tapped for the position of senior secretary for policy coordination. An's old post will be filled by Kang Seok-hun, a professor of economics and a lawmaker with the ruling Saenuri Party. The reshuffle comes after some senior secretaries offered to resign following the ruling party's defeat in last month's general election, and comes as the administration works to better implement its policies. The deputy floor leader of the nation's three main political parties continued their efforts to wrap up legislative affairs before the new National Assembly takes office at the end of the month. Kim Do-eub of Saenuri, Park Won-ju of the main opposition Minju Party, and Kim Kwan-young of the minor opposition People's Party met on Sunday. They agreed on the need to speed up their negotiations and vote on a set of undisputed bills by Thursday, the last day of the 19th National Assembly. Unfortunately, they failed to narrow their differences on a series of contentious bills, including one related to the Sewol ferry tragedy. They also failed to reach agreement on who will take the post of National Assembly Speaker, as well as how to allocate the leadership roles for the 18 standing committees. However, the three vowed to try and reach an agreement by June 14th at the latest. A North Korean vessel has been detected sailing in waters near Japan. Marine traffic and online vessel tracking websites said Sunday the ship belongs to Ocean Maritime Management and added it's the fourth vessel from the same company detected in the past month. The ship said stopped operations in the wake of the new UN sanctions against North Korea, requiring all member states to inspect cargo going in and out of the communist state. The sanctions were imposed after Pyongyang conducted its fourth nuclear test and launched an intercontinental ballistic missile earlier this year. Seoul's foreign ministry says it's keeping tabs on North Korean ships and pointed out the majority of vessels were very active before the sanctions, but most are now docked in port. Now that North Korea has formally declared itself a nuclear state, it seems to be changing its strategy for dealing with its adversaries. Kim Hyun-bin fills us in on what that means to Seoul and the international community.
When the Soviet Union and its communist ideology collapsed in late 1991, North Korea read the events as a grave threat to its way of government and its very existence. 2 years later, in 1993, the North began developing its own nuclear weapons program to both solidify the regime and act as a deterrent to all who would threaten it. In March of that year, the North announced it would withdraw from the Global Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but the decision was reversed after negotiations that led to the agreed framework with the United States in October of 1994. The goal of the agreement was to freeze the North's budding nuclear ambitions in exchange for assurances from Washington against the threat of nuclear weapons and promises of action toward the normalization of relations. 20 years later, North Korea seemed to have changed course, discarding its old strategy of using its nuclear program to extract economic aid, and instead demanding to be recognized as a nuclear state, as noted by North Korea's young leader after the recent Workers' Party Congress earlier this month.
We will enhance our economy and nuclear power as a strategic way of making a stand, and we will produce more nuclear weapons.
Experts believe that if the international community does not recognize North Korea as a nuclear state, Pyongyang will continue to develop its nuclear program. This differs greatly from the reason why the North started developing its nuclear weapons in the first place: survival. Experts also point out that South Korea and the U.S. need to come up with a better strategy to counter the North, which has become a serious threat with its growing nuclear arsenal. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
A South Korean government plan to boost domestic spending by giving Koreans a 4-day holiday last week may not have produced the desired effect. Data by major card company KB Kookmin Card shows credit and debit card spending overseas by Koreans outpaced that of domestic purchases, as more people chose to fly out of the country to enjoy the time off. Overseas card spending during the May 5th to 8th holiday jumped nearly 11% from the same period last year. On the domestic side, however, the figure rose a meager 5% over the same period. Korea's shipbuilding industry, which is struggling with heavy debt, high costs, and technological competition from China and Japan, can now add another concern to its pile of worry, as recent data shows their overseas operations are also deep in debt. Kim Ji-yeon brings us this report.
Korean shipbuilders' overseas operations struggled last year under the weight of massive debts. Market researcher Taewa.com says the combined debt of the overseas subsidiaries of the country's three major shipyards reached $4.6 billion last year. That's up nearly 29% from 2010, when the country's shipbuilding industry was in its heyday. Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering's overseas unit reported $1.9 billion in debt, up more than 43% over the 5-year period from 2010 to 2015. The amount of debt incurred by Samsung Heavy Industries' overseas units nearly tripled during the period to $1.1 billion last year, and the debts of Hyundai Heavy's overseas units jumped to $1.6 billion last year, despite its total amount of debt falling 13% from 2010. In response, Daewoo Shipbuilding, which recorded more than $4.3 billion in debt last year, says it will implement strong measures by the end of the month to remedy the situation, including reshuffling personnel and selling off non-essential assets. Samsung Heavy Industries is expected to submit its own plans to address its debt burden to its main creditor, Korea Development Bank, this week. And Hyundai Heavy presented its restructuring proposal last week to its main creditor, KB Hana Bank, saying it will cut 3,000 personnel. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Switching over to the tech realm, Samsung smartphones are enjoying incredible popularity in almost all emerging markets. According to Strategy Analytics on Sunday, Samsung Electronics topped smartphone sales in 14 of 15 emerging economies in the first quarter of this year. By size, the Indonesian market was the largest, selling 9.7 million units in the first quarter. But the one that got away is the Philippines, where Samsung was crushed by local manufacturer Cherry Mobile. Still, the Korean tech titan has more reasons to celebrate than not, as arch-rival Apple was left in the dust, scoring a double-digit market share in only 6 of the countries during the said period. Strategy Analytics selects 15 countries with higher market shares in the smartphone market every quarter and releases data on their sales. Efforts in Korea to wipe out all oxy-record Benkiser products from the country continue, with more protests planned throughout the nation. The Korean Federation of Environmental Movement held a press conference Sunday demanding that all large retailers stop selling oxy products. According to the group, oxy products are still for sale in many places, despite several big names like Lotte Mart and Home Plus participating in the boycott. They also asked any stores still selling the British multinational company's products to clearly display signs informing users that the products are responsible for numerous deaths and illnesses in Korea. The protests have expanded to include 15 major retailers nationwide, including in Busan and Daegu. Civic activists say Oxy still has an 80% share of the disinfectant market globally, and its products are still for sale in 180 countries worldwide. Korea celebrated Teachers' Day on May 15th. It's easy to join the crowd and shower your teachers with cards, flowers, and gifts on this day when you're in a classroom. But what about decades after you've moved on? Yoon Shin joins a group of much older former students who continue to reserve this special day for their high school teacher.
Teachers are usually greeted with handwritten cards and messages of gratitude written on blackboards from their students. But people who are no longer in school usually don't have the luxury of seeing their teachers every day. So some have come up with their own ways of honoring the important figures from their school years on Teachers' Day, which is celebrated on Sunday in Korea. Take this group of people, for example. They've been going back to visit their homeroom teacher from their senior year of high school almost every year on Teachers' Day for the past 20 years.
It was the year 1998 when I was their homeroom teacher. After they graduated, they came to visit me almost every year. They remind me why this job I have is so fulfilling. It's so delightful to see them.
For the bond to have continued for this long, it seems he must have given his former students much more than just an education.
For my wedding earlier this year, I asked him to officiate. I wanted someone I sincerely look up to, someone who means so much to me, to be there on my special day.
It's not common to have such a deep personal connection with a teacher or professor, but when I come to visit, it's a chance for me to look back on my year and to see whether I'm walking on the right path, the path he taught me to live. I'm grateful to have a mentor like him in my life.
We have all been students at some point in life, but not everyone can play the role of teacher. Teachers' Day is not just a day for students to thank their teachers, but for everyone to take a moment to recognize the people who have guided them onto the right path, just when they needed it the most. 이은신, Arirang News.
Outside of Korea, embattled Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has threatened to seize idle factories in his country under a new emergency decree issued Saturday. The move is seen as an attempt to extend his presidential powers and comes just a day after he declared a 60-day state of emergency. The country is struggling with food shortage, power cuts, and a shrinking economy overall. U.S. officials have warned the economic crisis in Venezuela is even turning Maduro's allies against him. His grip on power is believed to be weakening by the day, and some say the Venezuelan leader could be removed either in a coup by members of his party or by the military. Even if the U.S. wanted to lend a helping hand, the Venezuelan government would likely refuse as it blames the U.S. for the country's instability. And now for a quick look at the weather forecast before we go. It's been a wet and gloomy day here in Korea, and those conditions are set to continue through Monday morning nationwide. But sunny skies will return in all corners of the nation later in the day. Seoul starts today at 12 degrees Celsius and Cheongju and Daegu at 13. Later on, things will warm up to 23 in all three cities. And now let's check out the weather conditions in other parts of our world. We've come to the end of our newscast. As always, thank you for watching.